Hello, everybody. I'm Dax Shepard. I'm joined with Minnie Mouse, Mannequin Padman. I posted a photo of her. You'll have probably seen that before you heard this episode, but she looks just like miniature mouse today.
I'm wearing a bow in my hair.
A red bow.
A red bow in my hair.
And you have cute shoes on that look like mice feet. Or I guess miniature mouse, she always wore high heels or something.
Yeah, these are not the shoes that a Minnie Mouse would wear.
You look a lot like Minnie Mouse today. It's so fun. It's been a blast to be around you for a few hours. Today, if anyone who knows my wife and I well knows that we are head over heels in love and obsessed with Keith Morrison. We came to love him on Dateline, which we watch religiously. We just can't get enough of those murder mysteries. We like it dark, Minnie.
I know that you do.
In fact, our early friendship was forged. Well, this is a cute story about Monica. Back in Atlanta 3.5 years ago.
Yeah.
We had DVR'd all these episodes of Dateline, but I prefer the ones that are Keith Morrison handles the heavy lifting.
Sure.
And so you had gone through all of the episodes and labeled what they were about, who hosted them, the whole thing. You had a whole breakdown.
Synopses, title.
The way you would have done with your Friends episodes when you were younger.
Yeah, it really brought me back to that. It was nice.
That might have been the first time I was just really blown away with your due diligence.
Yeah.
It was a step above and beyond. Just to have that little pad of paper as a cheat sheet. It was great.
I wanted to give you what you wanted.
And you did in a big, big way. Dateline, their 27th season is going to debut September 28th at 10 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Keith Morrison is our guest. But before we get to Keith Morrison, our guest, we have a very exciting development here at AE headquarters, which is somebody bought a left-handed mug.
It's for real, you guys. Somebody purchased
a left-handed mug.
A lefty mug.
We got so excited here and we decided what kind of pieces of shit would accept $2,000 for a mug. It started as a joke, but because this wonderful woman, Shauna, bought this mug, she's up in Washington, we decided a couple things. We're going to donate that money to a worthy cause, and we're going to call Shauna to celebrate her purchase. And maybe we'll get a thing going so other, philanthropic people will know it's really going to go somewhere good, and you'll talk to us. So without further ado, this is our conversation with Shauna. And then when that concludes, we'll be into Keith Morrison.
This is Shauna.
Hi, Shauna.
It's Dax and Monica.
Holy cow. Oh my gosh, you two.
Shauna.
Shauna?
So, Shauna, you're the first person to have bought a left-handed mug. And have you received the mug?
Are you? I have. And I happen to be left-handed.
Oh.
We're of a better breed, aren't we?
Totally. I'm so appreciative that you say that, Dax, because it sounds provocative sometimes to say it.
Yeah, it's a little egotistical to say it, but let's be honest. We're the chosen people.
But let's be honest, it's fucking true, and I just appreciate you affirming it.
And what do you do up in Bellingham?
Now that I just said the F word, you might be surprised, but I'm a HR executive for a health system.
Oh,
people need.
I like it even more for an HR person to let loose some profanities because I go, oh, they get it. We live in the real world.
Makes her human.
Yeah, you're on my team now. What did I do wrong? I'm more open to it.
It is totally true. It is totally true. I've done it for a long time. So both the cursing and HR.
Okay. Well, we are going to pay your generosity forward, and we're going to donate the money that you spent on your left-handed coffee mug to a charity. Now, is there a charity that you love that we don't feel like it's to reelect like a pedophile or something? Is there a charity you love?
A non-controversial charity.
An apolitical charity that you happen to love? Not the Roy Moore Fund, whatever that was.
The Roy Moore Legal Fund. Oh my God! Do not make my head.
Defense Fund.
I'm super passionate about homelessness, particularly folks where there's a lot of homeless stuff that's respite, but ones that are specifically dealing with families, because homelessness, similar to the immigration issues, a lot of times they're forced to split families up to provide respite housing. And so there's a local nonprofit, Lydia Place, that deals with specifically keeping families together, especially if mom or dad have a conviction and they can't get into regular. Anyway, I could send you some information.
That's great. That sounds great.
Because that's kind of what Path does in LA here, is they get families housing.
Totally.
Okay, so it's Lydia's Way?
Lydia's Place.
Lydia's Place.
They are a United Way partner agency, and they are not Kukaluka. That's a technical term. Nor are they associated with any specific
church,
religious.
Yeah.
That was the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, nah.
Fantastic.
No.
Well, we are going to then pay forward your humongous generosity. We also, you probably can't imagine the elation that happened. It was like a bomb went off, because my sister learns of this first. My sister Carly receives the orders, and she just started spastically texting us, someone bought a left-handed mug. And then we were then calling each other, and then my wife was in on it, and everyone was just, we were so excited.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
That makes me so happy. I'm going to sound like a gusher. Well, obviously I sound like a gusher if I bought a $2,000 mug in the hopes that you would pay it forward to charity. But I believed I knew you well enough that you would. But I have told so many people about this podcast. I'm sure some of my friends are like, just marry it already. Like, shut it.
You're a one-man street team?
Oh my God, I know. It's like, okay, that's enough. But I think it is so important. I mean, just your ability to express strong, passionate opinions on controversial topics without drawing blood and maintaining and going there. I think people have gotten so scared to engage in discourse with each other, because they just think there's nowhere, this can't end well. And you express love really freely to each other and your guests, which I also think is really, really important.
This makes us so happy. And we're going to come up to Seattle, and we very much hope that you will come to our show, and then we will make sure to point you out and embarrass you and then celebrate you.
I'll be recruiting fellas in the crowd to make Hanukkah signs. So.
Can't wait. Okay, fantastic. Well, I think I speak for both of us when we say we love you.
Yeah, we love you. Thank you. So generous.
And we will
love you too.
Definitely see you in real life in Seattle.
Sounds awesome sauce.
Okay. And again, you have my permission to extract my DNA and make a clone of me. If you meet someone who does cloning, it's there for the taking.
We're just still waiting for the results of your 23andMe. So I can't wait for that podcast.
And we love you.
We love you up here, and I love you guys huge.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
I am very, very flattered to announce that one of my absolute idols, Keith Morrison, is sitting in the attic of the Armchair Expert. Welcome to our podcast,
I
Keith.
feel like I'm in a strange dream.
You and me both. Just hearing the tenor, that timbre, I'm waiting to be murdered by Monica.
She looks capable of it.
That she is. She's an overachiever, so she'd probably have me diced up in minutes.
Yeah.
I've not been able to ever do this with a previous guest because I've not ever written a tribute to a previous guest.
Well, you stop.
But do you? I don't even know that you were aware of this, but the Dateline folks, knowing I was such a huge fan of yours, when they had their 25th year celebration, whatever you guys just celebrated.
Yeah, it's something like that.
They asked if I
Long
wanted...
time, anyway.
Yes, decades.
Uh,
They asked if I would write a tribute to you. And I did, and it was published in a magazine, and I doubt you've ever heard it.
well, I did.
You did?
I didn't hear it, but I saw it.
You
And
saw it.
I didn't know. Are you allowed to swear on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can really get into it here.
I read that and I thought, I don't know whether to shit or go blind. That man said those nice things about me.
Shit or go blind. I'm definitely going to use that. But anyways, and I know this will embarrass you, but that's just the price of doing this podcast. But I'm gonna now read my tribute to you, just because I think it's a really good introduction to you and why I love you so much. Okay, this is the tribute. My love for Keith Morrison started with the obvious things that attract most everyone to him: his appearance and style, his vocal acrobatics, the poetry behind his storytelling. But somewhere around my 100th episode, his subtler, more nuanced qualities began to surface. His ability to lean on almost any surface, barbed wire, fire, wind.
Yeah, right.
His high-octane brand of empathy, and his spot-on eye for pairing any environment with the perfect leather jacket. He is that unique blend of scrappy hustler and honed professional, an intoxicating mix, to say the least.
Were you drunk when you wrote that?
No, but I do feel like I channeled you just with the last line, to say the least. Doesn't that sound a little KM?
Well, perhaps.
Yes, perhaps.
This is wonderful.
It really is. I don't think there could be a more auditorily pleasing guest to have on.
Yeah.
You could just virtually just read passages from the encyclopedia.
Say words.
All right, both of you.
Okay,
Immediately. I mean, all right.
But let's just bring everyone up to speed in case you've missed any of these things. Kristen and I are very obsessed with you.
And as I say, I don't know whether she should go blind.
Right.
But what a wonderful person. I spent a day with her, as you know.
She interviewed you, right?
Yeah, she interviewed me. It was a fun little thing.
Yeah.
But I was so impressed with what a really bright, perspicacious sort of person she is.
Yes, she's hyper talented. It's not easy to live with her. It's like if you were...
I was going to say that's what I thought after the thing, but no, I wouldn't say
It's like if you were a bench player in the NBA and then your roommate was Michael Jordan. It's just a little bit... It's a bit of a reminder daily of the gap in talent level.
Oh, get out of here.
But...
Yeah.
She loves you beyond belief. And in fact, I regularly list her get out of jail free cards, and you make that list of 5. And I think that makes you uncomfortable because you're a happily married man. But suffice to say, that is
the age
true.
Of her, it could be her grandfather.
No.
I don't
she's
think so.
She's old. She's 37.
She's old?
So
God,
old.
that's old. Holy cow.
See, doesn't that change things? But we did come to know you on Dateline, which we became obsessed with a few years ago. And then immediately we were just completely drawn to your segments. And you're going to think I'm blowing smoke up your ass, but this is a sincere evaluation from my perspective of what makes you so great at that job. Did you ever see Usual Suspects?
Yeah, I think I did, but I probably forget much of it.
It's great. It's Kevin... Spacey is playing Kaiser Sose, and there's this group of other guys, right?
Right.
And one of the guys is Benicio del Toro, the actor.
Yes, right.
And it's a nothing role. There's nothing there for anybody to do. Any other person would have been completely forgettable, right? He has no lines. So he chooses to kind of stutter and mumble his way through this thing. And all of a sudden, he's the most compelling character in this great ensemble. He made a mountain out of nothing. Your job could very easily just be exposition, moving the story along, and yet you're such a huge component of why it's enjoyable. It's so unique. It's the weirdest brand. It truly. I say this sincerely.
Well, I know. Gosh, it's very nice.
Yeah. Did you go into that job? Obviously, you had a lot of experience in broadcasting prior to that.
Yeah, I'm extremely old.
No, I don't think
it's true.
so.
And I haven't painted a fence in a long time.
You haven't.
No.
What's the last bit of manual labor you did?
Oh, gee. Well,
Tying your shoes. You don't even do that. I noticed. You wear slip-ons.
slip-on shoes. Yeah. I managed to avoid it all.
What if I noticed when you were leaving that the back of your outfit was Velcroed? It was just a one piece that you slid on.
It's not a bad idea, actually. I should work on that.
So manual labor. Have you done any recently?
No, well, not lately. No,
Okay.
no.
You don't have any kind of hobbies that like gardening or anything, woodworking?
Well, no.
Okay.
I used to do that. I loved woodworking years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd build things, all kinds of things. Kids' doll houses when they were little. They had to get a dollhouse from me,
Yeah.
and or a cabinet or something like that. And then one day I was, my wife was went for a decade or so of being an interior designer. So she was,
okay.
and one of her first clients was Nancy Grahn. She's a soap opera actress, had a wonderfully successful career for the past, 25 or 30 years, I guess.
Probably done 1,000 episodes or something.
At least 30 years. Yeah, she's done a lot. And so anyway, she was having her parents over a week or so later, and she had to get this job done, and it involved, because of the time, I guess everybody wanted to put up crown molding and build their houses and, dress them up a little bit. And so I was cutting some of this crown molding for her bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And because the guy who was doing the job was a little slow and needed some help, and I had the expertise and I had the chop saw.
Yeah.
So I went over there and I was cutting away. Now, doing crown molding is very difficult because it comes out at an angle, and it doesn't all come out at the same angle. You have to figure out the angle and the way to cut it. And there's a method that I didn't really learn properly.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Here's the inciting incident.
Right. You see my thumb here?
I just now noticed. Yeah, you have no finger.
So I corkscrewed the thumb. I put it under the saw.
Oh,
Saw blade came down.
oh,
And it came off, but it came off in a kind of a corkscrew pattern.
oh my
wow.
goodness.
Yeah, so it was complicated. And oh no, I said.
What was your actual reaction? Do you remember?
It was that.
It was.
It focuses the mind, but for some reason it wasn't to produce a scream. Oh. So Suzanne was there. She was working on this project too.
I'm assuming there's a lot of blood, right?
Quite a bit of blood in the bedroom of the soap opera actress. In fact, it was all over the ceiling, the walls, her brand new carpet that Suzanne had bought for her, and the bed, everything. And so we hopped into the car and went to the hospital. And this doctor, like 18 hours later, he had reattached it. And it doesn't bend right or look properly like a thumb, but it's better than a dog. I'm like a monkey now.
Well, visually, I can't tell anything from this distance.
Yeah, it looks normal.
And I'm only 4 feet away, so if it was really, well, how about you, Monica? You're a little closer.
It looks totally. I would never have thought twice.
Really?
I'm not very observant.
You
but
don't look at that thumb and go, "Oh no."
I don't.
Right? It doesn't look like it's been through an "oh no" experience. But for listeners who are not geographically inclined, you're from Canada, and you grew up in where? Saskatchewan or something?
You know this. Yes, I grew up in Saskatchewan.
I didn't say it correctly, did I? Yeah.
Saskatchewan.
Okay, Saskatchewan.
Eastern Canadians call it Saskatchewan, and it drives Saskatchewanians crazy because they say Saskatchewan.
It's your Oregon.
Exactly. Yeah. So the people who live there see, it kind of talking down to you when they use that expression. And so, I grew up in one of those places. It was a little bit resentful of
is that mid
elites on the coast.
Is that mid?
It's right in the middle of the country. It's flat as a pancake. Is
it above Montana? Is that your border?
Kind of
state?
Montana, North Dakota border. If you went straight up from that border, you'd get to Saskatoon.
Oh, okay, Saskatoon. And the population when you were a kid there, what is that?
When I was a kid, it was maybe 150, 170,000, something like that.
So it's a good size.
Yeah, it was. I used to think of it as the sort of the Paris of the prairies.
Okay,
a river going through it and bridges.
Of course, you would call it the Paris of the prairies. I can see you introducing some gruesome murder there right now. Yeah. But what did your folks do?
My dad was a preacher, a minister.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes, in a kind of at the time increasingly progressive Protestant church called the United Church of Canada. They don't have the equivalent here really. It's if you took the most progressive churches, progressive, is that the right word?
I guess so. I think.
The most progressive churches.
You're saying like don't kill gay people, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
In fact, why don't you have a gay person as your moderator of the church, of the main person?
Well, that's definitely progressive.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
A gay female, a gay black female.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so that kind of thing.
A lot of intersectionality here.
Right. So if you put all those really progressive churches together, and then you made them a little more progressive, that's
no
the
kidding.
Church. Yeah.
Oh wow!
Great.
Called the United Church of Canada. And so he was a minister there. But the point was, I guess, or whether there was a point, I don't know. This
is a pointless show. Let me just take the burden off of you. There's
Yeah.
no fucking point to any of this. It's just it answers the question: what if I was in a room hanging out with Keith Morrison, Monica Padman, and Dax Shepard,
and I get to talk about myself, and it's really kind of
You don't like it. You told me that I should tell. I should out you that just before we started. You said you're just generally not comfortable being asked the questions. Yeah.
Well, it seems odd to talk about yourself like this. Isn't it?
You said self-indulgent.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't you think that someone that's accomplished a lot like you have, that you could be of service to people, that you could share with people the journey, the times that it was maybe hard, that you found some tactic or tool to overcome, and that's something people could adopt? You have a value to pass on.
You could. That's the arc of a story there that you've got. Do you write them yourself?
I do. I'm a writer. Yeah.
Well, you are.
So what's mom's capacity while
she
dad's
was
a minister?
She was the choir leader and the organist. So it was a team, you see. And the consequence was that all of us kids went to church every Sunday and went to the Sunday school and taught Sunday school and went to church twice, actually, morning and night.
Oh, wow. Did
and
you like it as much as I did, which was I hated it? Or did you?
It was, my father was such a wonderful man that it was impossible to hate it. But it was okay, here we go.
It's just the seating, if nothing else. It's uncomfortable, right? Those pews, they're made of fucking plywood.
I know.
I feel like they're making people basically repent just by sitting. It's like a weird.
Get out of here, yeah, that kind of thing.
Do you think it's by design?
Oh, I don't know. Could be.
I don't know.
Could be.
It wouldn't be that challenging to make those things comfortable. McDonald's has figured it out.
Some of them do, but they sort of feel as if they're bypassing the part where because there's a sort of a penance involved.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like you got to earn it or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe it could be to stave off people falling asleep, because it could get boring at times. And if you're too comfortable, maybe.
Could be.
It's like a talk show. They keep it at like 58 degrees, right? To keep that audience awake, because they'll lose people.
Right.
If it's warm.
Oh, is that why they do it? No,
Yeah. Okay, so mom is running the choir, and she's the organist.
Yes. And I was in the choir.
Oh, you were?
Yes. And so you had to do all these things. And in the end, it was incredibly beneficial, because these are all things that are extremely valuable in my line of work. You learn how to speak correctly, how to speak to crowds of people, because, as we grew up, we'd be allowed to read the lesson or something like that, or, teach a bunch of little kids about something. So you're learning those skills, and you're learning how to sing. And my mother used to have this expression, which was, the cadence is everything. The way you emote, or the way you, a musical way of singing and talking will pull people into your, will get people hoping that you succeed as you perform for them, because they're into it.
Yeah. They're rooting for you.
Right. I mean, that was the notion she had, and I think.
And then I'd also imagine another benefit that applied later in life was that you're also dealing with a cross section of the community. You're not siloed in whatever socioeconomic bracket, right? It's probably attracting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I interrupt people all the time.
No,
it's a very bad
People
habit.
complain about it on Twitter all the time.
Do they?
I'm just so excited to talk to people.
Well, and you're exciting to talk to, so there you go.
Yeah, so you have carte blanche to interrupt as much as possible. Yeah.
But your point is a very good one, because you know that probably 75% of the people in just talking about that situation in those little churches in the Canadian prairies, that 75% of the people about don't really agree with this progressive theology, increasingly progressive theology. They wish you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And they have a much more, people are much more inclined to want to have a kind of a hard and fast rules-based system that doesn't change.
Yeah. We're very comfortable in black and white, right?
Right.
That's comforting for some reason.
Right. So you say things with the realization some people aren't going to like what you are about to say. So you're a little bit careful with their feelings, because if they don't like what you say, they're just going to turn you off.
Right. Yes, you don't want to alienate the people you're trying to connect with, right? So that's a skill. And do you have a comfortable lifestyle as the minister and organist? Was life comfortable? You guys were
no, actually, it And in my father's case, it was probably by choice as much as anything else. But in the many years now since he died, just talking about what a great person he was, but he really was. And he lived the message.
Did he live a Spartan lifestyle?
He lived a Spartan life. He was, he never I can't remember what year he retired, but he would have made the equivalent of less than minimum wage his entire career.
Wow.
And raised 5 kids.
And did that make you covet wealth?
No, not particularly. I think I feel guilty about it. Because I live a pretty comfortable life now. So.
Yeah, it could be something to wrestle with. I completely coveted it, so I don't feel that guilty about it. Okay. But also, it's not, I talk about this all the time. It's also not the fantasy I had either. So when you covet it, you run the risk of, this fantasy I whipped up in my head of being Ricky Schroeder on Silver Spoons. It just, I don't have a train in my house.
No.
You probably hadn't seen that show, but he was a little kid and he had a locomotive in his house.
I saw that show, and as you're talking, my mind drifted, and I was thinking about this lovely.
We could probably house a train in there someday.
I think so. Yeah.
But so when you told your father that you wanted to pursue journalism, did that feel like a worldly endeavor?
I didn't tell him that.
Okay.
In fact, I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do, and I was a terrible student. I never did my homework. I didn't study ever, and so you can skate through for a period of time, and even through high school. And
was that because of attention deficit issues, or do you think you had a learning disability? Or just
nobody talked about those things then, because remember, I'm super old. So at the time, it was just I fidgeted and I didn't pay attention, and
okay,
and I didn't, and but my teachers were good enough to let me graduate from high school with a high enough average to go to college, which I immediately screwed up in every imaginable way by being interested in all the extracurricular stuff. Not the, go get drunk and get laid, but the more like, okay, now I'm going to change the world and join a political club and, be in debates and things like that. And I don't, then you don't study for the political science exam and you write some sort of BS about the marvelous philosophies that you don't have a clue about.
So you don't do great in high school, but you graduate.
Do you mind if I turn the phone off?
I don't mind at all.
So sorry.
Gosh, it's going to be hard to offend me.
I do that all the time. Yeah. Before we start interviews, the sound person will say, "Oh, everybody's phone's turned off." And we all say, yeah. I forget to turn off my phone every time, and it rings in the middle.
Yeah. So it's got to be very uncomfortable when it rings and you're in the middle of a very emotional part of an interview, right?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, that's a bit of a faux pas, I'd say. So you graduate from college, I'm assuming.
No. I flunked out. No, I was.
This story is full of twists and turns.
Oh yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How does one get into journalism in Canada?
Well, nowadays you get into it the same way you do here, which is you go to some fancy journalism school as a postgrad after you get your basic arts degree or whatever they call it. But then I think there were only 1 or 2 journalism schools of any note anywhere in North America, but they were becoming popular, so people were starting to go to them. I, however, having been unceremoniously evicted and told if you decide to become mature, you could maybe apply to come back, but not for a while.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This feels very Canadian.
Yeah, so
we still love you. You have to leave, but we do love you, and we're rooting for you. So figure your shit out and come back.
Right, exactly that.
Yeah.
So my ever kindly father said, well, we have this program in the church where you can go off and spend a summer filling in for ministers who are taking their holidays in small towns, little farming towns, very small because we don't want to screw up too much.
Yeah.
I did that for a summer.
You did. You spread the gospel.
So
at 20 some years old.
Yeah, 20, and so I'd be looking out of this crowd of farmers and, salt of the earth people who had lived full lives, and many of them were in their 60s or 70s or something. And they've been around, and I hadn't. And I'd say all these things that I thought were heretical, and they'd be falling asleep in the back of the church. But you know what?
But can I just say that takes a tremendous amount of balls to be 20 and get up and basically inform elder people there's a leap of faith in there.
But I realized it was so full of shit that and not only that, but I didn't really believe what I was saying anyway.
Okay.
So, but my first official, God, it's weird talking about yourself like that, and it really is self-indulgent. Anyway,
But it's so interesting for us.
Yeah.
So my first official function as this student minister for the summer was a funeral for an 80-year-old farmer who had suddenly died and left his wife of close to 60 years as a widow, and a farm nobody knew what was going to happen to. And it was the neighbors would come around and help. But anyway, there's a funeral.
This is heavy. This is
heavy.
Yeah.
I had to do the funeral. And so I met with the widow, all, 20 years of me, and was trying to figure out how to be empathetic and comfort her in her situation and ask her what she wanted me to do. And she started asking me for advice and kind of leaning on my shoulder. And
wow,
it was a moment where you thought, boy, if you don't know what you're talking about, you better go figure it out before you start messing with people's lives.
Yeah, the stakes are high and they're real. And
right.
Yes, this is a real human.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
I have a similar question about that, but I'm gonna save it for a little bit later.
Oh,
but just that
structure.
Fuck that. I'm gonna go right at it right now. We can zigzag. I have to imagine. Well, let me I'll give you an example. So there was this popular show, Loveline. It was a radio show, and Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla were the hosts of it.
Yeah.
And 14 years ago, I went on it to promote a movie.
Okay.
And then you start taking calls from real life people, right? And these are real problems. Someone's got syphilis or whatever the things were that they had. And I had a really hard time navigating being funny, doing what I'm there to do, which is to be funny and entertaining. And then also reminding myself regularly, there's a real human being on the other end of this phone call who's panicked about this thing. And that's real, real, real. But I actually have to, as a mental exercise, force myself to go, this is real. This is real. This is real. Do you ever get caught up in the production of your show? And you're managing a lot of things because you produce these things. And there's lighting and there's the time and there's audio. And do you ever find yourself having to bring yourself back to like, Keith, this is a real person. Don't forget that.
Well, I'm really, really lucky in the respect of that this program is so well organized and highly functioning, having practiced for a long time doing this. I tell people, we're just going to sit here and talk. I don't know what the hell these people are doing around us. This lighting stuff, they say they're ready, but they're never really ready, and they want to tweak their cameras. I don't know what the hell they're doing. Yeah, and I don't. And I don't know what the producers are all younger and way smarter than me, and they're
probably
doing
were not
something.
Asked to leave their college.
No, they all graduated from Columbia with masters in something, or at least masters. So, and they're really, good at what they do, and it allows me to not have to think about any of that stuff.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
I enter into a story, I've just got the sort of background of all the people there, and I can sit down across from them like you're doing today and talk. And it's a bit of a structure to it.
But you also have a job. You're not actually just free to shoot the shit with these people or be completely
for as long as you want. Like if I can't get it out of them in an hour, then it's 2 hours. And if 2 hours isn't quite enough, then you just if you see the possibility that this person is going to contribute significantly to the story, you just go on as long as you want.
Yeah. But you don't feel that in your brain where you're juggling an objective, which again you have a job to do there. Now whether you have the luxury of taking 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever, you definitely have a mission.
Sure. Of course. Yeah.
And so one side of your brain is engaged right? And
Right.
that's kind of the more tactical, producer brain.
Yeah.
And then the other side of your brain is your emotional brain, where you're literally talking to someone who maybe lost a child or a spouse or something, right? And I was just wondering if you can feel your brain going, okay, click out of that mode, click back into this mode.
Nah.
No.
Not really.
Okay.
I mean,
Did it start that way, or did it evolve?
yes, I think it evolves, and again, it's because you've got really. I don't have to worry about all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty nice. Okay, back to college. You leave college. You bury someone. You officiate a burial, which is a lot of pressure for a young guy. And then you end up writing, right? That's your first foray into journalism. Is you write for a paper? Is that accurate?
It was no. I didn't write for the paper. I was a gopher for the editor of the paper, who was a neighbor of mine, and that's it was it's how you fall into things. So I had finished this student minister gig. I didn't know what the hell to do with myself,
Or all the money you had just made.
yeah. But I did have an old car, those old Volvo 544, the slope back dealios.
100%, yeah.
B16, the sort of cheapest version of that.
Yeah, those are cool.
They are now. They weren't
Yeah.
then. So I had one of those, and I ran most of the time. But my neighbor up the street was the editor of the local newspaper, and he didn't drive. For whatever reason.
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
and but really what my job was to get the mail, to pick
Okay.
him up, to take him to work, so on.
Yeah.
But it was an introduction to the business. But the thing that made the reason, again, I had nothing to do with getting into broadcasting.
Okay.
My only responsibility was to pick up this old kind of grumpy guy, take him to work. He would have a bag with him. One was in the bag was a bottle of glue, and a bottle of
Wonderful.
some spirit. And
wonderful.
so
This is great.
But he was an old-fashioned editor. What he would do is somebody would write a story, and he would look at it and say, "This is shit," and he'd cut it up into little pieces, rearrange it so the structure worked better, and then glue it all together on another piece of paper.
So he did have a genius for that.
Yeah, and he was an admired guy, really good old-fashioned newspaperman. But he reached the retirement age of the paper right around the time I was driving him, and had to go and took a job as the news director of a radio station.
Oh, okay.
In Saskatoon.
And he obviously needed to be transported there as well.
He did, and so that's really when I started. So. But
did he discover that you had a knack for something or something
no,
special?
I just thought, boy, I could do this. Listening to people read the news on the radio, and it sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, and I went to see the guy who was running the radio station, and he said, "Have you ever been to journalism school?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Good. Wouldn't hire if you had."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's great.
So it was good, and the editor would send me down to magistrate's court, and there you again run into the real stories where people have done they had a moment where they did a bad thing, and they are appearing before this pretty grumpy judge in the morning, and he's giving them a punishment of some kind. It's still a small enough town that stuff got reported, and the kind of media where a rock and roll radio station had a 6 or 7 man news department. News department, no women allowed.
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, no Monicas. That
Right.
must be nice.
right.
How dare you? This would fall apart without me.
I know.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna fast forward. You end up getting a very legit job as a reporter, right? And the thing that, if I'm right, that kind of propels you to some notoriety and acclaim is that you end up covering the Yom Kippur War. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Right. I got there.
What is that? 73.
73. Yeah.
Okay.
November 73. I got there sort of 2/3 of the way through the thing. So
Had anything prepped you for that? Had you been on location like that? Had you been to a war zone? Had you?
not a war zone, no. I mean, I'd done my international reporting. Had been in
Detroit,
and I went to Cleveland in '71 when the
river
whatever
caught
year
on fire?
when the river caught on fire.
Yeah,
did
sure.
that. Went, first time was I was sent down to Minot, North Dakota, to do something or other in some meeting, and wound up at a party instead. Yeah, too young. But so where were we?
Yom Kippur
Yom
War.
Kippur, yeah. So
where did you go? Syria or Egypt or Israel?
you know, by that point, it was the Israelis had kind of resumed the upper hand, and they turned the tide back.
like day 6 of this war or something.
Yeah, later maybe. Anyway, so we positioned ourselves in Tel Aviv and really were reporting from the Israeli side, and they'd drive us up one day to the Golan Heights where there were still battles going on, and then the next day we'd go down to the Egyptian front, which pretty soon turned into negotiations at a place called Kilometer 101, and there was a tent with Israeli generals and Egyptian generals, arguing it out over where the demarcation line should be and what the rules of the game should be. And one time a firefight broke out, I don't know, maybe a mile or so from the tent, and you saw that was actually the thing that really sticks in my memory and kind of gives you hope for the humanity of mankind. These two generals, or two high-ranking officers, one Israeli, one Egyptian, came tearing out of the tent and hopped into a Jeep together and roared off and stopped that firefight.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And you witnessed it.
Yeah.
Did you get that rush of like, holy shit, I'm actually in a war. I've only read about this or seen this.
I'm scared shitless.
Oh, okay.
I hope I get through this okay. But also, I mean, I don't know. Some people are really good at covering conflicts and wars. I'm not one of them.
Okay. What kind of people were you interviewing? Are you talking to Israelis or just everyone?
It was easy to talk to the Israelis because we were everything because of where we were positioned. Everything I wrote and every picture we took had to pass through the Israeli censor before we could send it back to back to Canada, and that was. It was normally it wasn't too hard, but you couldn't really. There were some things they didn't want you to talk about.
Right.
I'm not telling tales out of school. That's pretty normal that a country in the conflict doesn't want you to tell stories from the other side. But that's a unique place, and all we had to do was leave our hotel room and walk 2 or 3 blocks, and you're talking to a whole different group of people who have an entirely different point of view about the way things are. And so we spent a lot of time during our time there with Palestinians and learning about their side of the story, and that there's 2 sides to every story, and there's that's both the hope and the tragedy of humankind.
Well, no matter what your position is, you lose sight of the fact that at very least, there's humans on both sides.
Right.
So you start talking to someone and you're like, oh my God, this guy's a dad. Oh, I see he has a wedding ring. Oh, he blank, blank, blank.
And when they invite you in for dinner and you spend an evening with them and you talk to the whole family and you see what warm, wonderful people they are. And I'm not just talking about that situation, any situation, any conflict.
Yeah.
You've heard people demonized for months or years even, as somehow deficient or bad people or run by bad people or something.
Right.
And then you get to know them personally and you realize that's all horseshit.
Yeah.
These are just people and they're so I get worked up about that. I mean, to me, war is not exciting. War is a dismal failure of the simple quality of being human.
I couldn't agree more with you. It is ironic that I've been twice because I am generally a big flaming liberal who's anti-war, but I'm also very pro letting the guys over there know I'm thinking about them. So it was a weird, it was a mixed bag of emotions while I'm there. It's like, look at the manpower, look at the ingenuity, look at the expense, all to blow shit up ultimately or leave some dead bodies.
And then these poor sons of bitches come home. Forgive my using that expression. It's meant only in the most positive and embracing way.
Yeah.
These poor guys and women come home and they have to deal with the aftermath of it and reinsert themselves into society that doesn't really give a shit what they were doing over there. They just,
Oh yeah.
and they don't get the services they need. That's, I think, pretty much agreed by everybody. They've done this huge service for their nation, and they're really not appreciated. And every time there is one of these conflicts from, Second World War, Vietnam, First World War, Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, they come home and you have a lost generation of people who just have to struggle now.
Yeah, and also I remember learning this in a Vietnam history class in college, which I never had thought of, was the guys in World War II. Not easy at all. Obviously, both my grandparents were in World War II. The amount of combat they actually saw versus the time they were there versus the Vietnam War was like tenfold, right? So the guys in Vietnam were seeing way more actual combat. And then not only that, the guys in World War II, they took a boat home, right? So they're leaving the Philippines or wherever they were based. And they've got 3 weeks with their friends to decompress, talk about what they saw. The guys in Vietnam got a nudge on the shoulder. They were on a flight 10 hours later. They were landing in San Francisco, seeing people with signs saying, "You're a baby killer." There was no decompression. There was, it was a 24 hours from a rice paddy to JFK.
Is that the sound of helicopters out here?
I called in the military. I thought this would be a great time. It's Chinook is hovering overhead.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a lot to adjust
I hadn't
to.
thought about that 3-week decompression thing, but you're right. That's true.
Yeah. No.
And there's an additional thing. We did a story about this, sort of the moral cost of war to the people who actually have to do the fighting.
The ugly business.
Yeah, the ugly part. And in the Second World War, the likelihood that a person who was armed and looking an enemy in the face would actually pull the trigger was very low, maybe 20, 25%.
Yep.
They wanted to up it. It got up to 50% at Vietnam.
Yep.
It's up at 85, 90% now because of the, deliberate
Training
that they get to make that happen.
I read a great book written by either Annapolis or the other military academy. What is it? West Point. Psychologist professor who's also a vet. And he wrote a book called On Killing.
Yes. Yeah,
Did you read that?
That was the book that informed the basis of our story.
Okay, great. And what they talk about in there, which it's really, it has a broader thing to think about just as a human being, which is what would happen was two really fascinating things is we think of our brains as being wired for flight or fight, right? We're either going to kill someone or we're going to flee.
Right.
But that underestimates the two other categories, which are posture and submit. So if you look at battles between animals in nature, you'll find that 90% of the time a bear raises up on its back hind legs, it growls, the other one cowers, right? And then that bear, they don't fight. So that's a built-in mechanism to resolve that conflict without either flight or fight. And humans have that too.
Sure.
Yeah, so in trench warfare in World War I, they're seeing a guy run at them with a gun, the gun's firing, it's making a loud noise. Your brain's telling you that's posturing. Yeah. So I'm going to submit. I'm going to go still. I'm going to put my head down, and then I'll be safe, right? That's very hardwired. I'm not going to fire my gun. I just want to submit. Right. Also, when your blood pressure raises above whatever your heart rate, above 160, all your thinking shifts from your frontal lobe right to your midbrain, to your reptilian brain. And you're no longer, you can't make decisions like you and I would normally make decisions. You're just in instinct mode. So yes, they train guys out of that. They train guys to act while they're thinking shifting to midbrain, and they've been really effective at it, and it's crazy. Yeah. Okay, so you cover the Yom Kippur War, and you win some awards, and you get attention, and you get a pretty good job off of that. It's going well at that point, right? You're gainfully employed, to say the least.
Yes. Yes.
And
I got a job at the network. I was hired. It was a kind of a sit on a hard church bench for a little while until we decide whether or not you're a serious person, and then we might give you a really good job. So it was, I was hired by the network, but as the overnight writer to write the news for the morning show.
Okay.
So I'd come in at 11 o'clock at night, and I felt that I was getting pretty good at honing down a complex story to a 15-minute tell that the anchor would read. And then after a few months, I took over as the morning news anchor on the Canadian morning show. And then, in fact, I was a weatherman at a station in Vancouver, in addition to being a reporter. So I'd go out and cover the harbors and labor disputes during the day, and then in the evening come back and be the happy weather guy.
Tell him the weather's going to suck. I mean, primarily your job in
Pretty
Canada is to
much,
say
yeah.
this weather sucks, right?
Certainly Vancouver. Yeah.
You-
It'll be rainy. Yeah.
When do you set your sights on America,
Never
the
did.
USA? You never did.
No, there's always, among many people working in Canadian television, there's Peter Jennings went to the States, and boy, look how he did, and Morley Safer, and a whole bunch of people.
It's the big show, right? Like in sports.
Yeah, exactly. But with me, it was just like, again, falling into stuff. I was at the time, I'd moved over to the CBC, the mother corporation, the kind of government-funded.
That's your equivalent of the BBC.
Yes, and it was in those days. It was the Canadian Big Show. So I was doing I was co-hosting and reporting for an every evening current affairs show called The Journal, which the junior co-host, I should say.
Okay.
The main co-host was David Frum's mother, Barbara. You know David Frum, the conservative commentator?
I don't. Embarrassed to admit.
He was the guy who he was credited with coming up with the line "the axis of evil" for George W. Bush.
Oh, really?
And he was kind of a punching bag for liberal media as a conservative, but now he's anti-Trump. And anyway, he's kind of a public intellectual in America. But at the time, he was a high school student in Toronto, and his mother Barbara was a Canadian icon and the main host of this program called The Journal. And I was Barbara's live cutaway, I used to like to say.
Oh, yeah.
But, anyway, I was working on that show, and I was doing a story for it. And a producer of the story and I were sitting in a coffee shop or in a hotel, and this is obviously pre-cell
bed?
phones. No. And I was called to the phone at the hotel, and that's like that.
You're worried
really?
someone died, probably.
Well, yeah. I mean, they would have had to contact somebody at the office at the CBC, and they would sort of know where I was staying and might direct a call if it was important. So I went to the phone, and it was somebody who wanted to connect me with the general manager of the television station in Los Angeles, KNBC. And so this weird thing happened, and he wanted me to come down and see him. And it was like that very day, that producer and I had been saying, it's great working at the CBC. I think we'll just, we could be lifers here.
Yeah, yeah.
At the time, I was very happy, very comfortable. I was married to this wonderful woman who had been Pierre Trudeau's press secretary, and we were
I was going to bring that up.
Children like crazy and just having a wonderful time.
Yeah, your first wife worked with the first Trudeau.
My current and first and only.
That's fantastic. Well, she is still your. I guess it wasn't too erroneous. She is your first. She's just your only.
She's my only. Let's put it that way. There was a first, but anyway.
Moving on.
Right, anyway.
So yeah, she worked for the first Trudeau, and he was a big hero, right, in Canada.
He was, yes. They had this Trudeau mania.
Trudeau mania.
And he was a lightning rod figure in Canadian politics. If people were asked who was the most, I mean, there is Trudeau up here somewhere, and then the rest of them kind of vie for second. But
is it fair to say he was like the JFK of Canada?
I think so, but he was in power a long time. He was in power 15 years. Voted out once for a year and then back in again. But he was divisive as well as being loved. So he was loved and hated, but more loved than hated, and thus his electoral success. But he was, without doubt, the most brilliant person in whose company I've ever spent any time. And whenever I interviewed him, he would, which wasn't very often because one didn't get to interview him very often, but it was like a game to him. easy.
Uh-huh.
And he would delight in kind of dancing around
Outmaneuvering.
reporters, and you feel like you're soaking wet and feeling quite ridiculous by the time the thing is over.
Really, while you were saying that, I was paying very close attention, but I was also doing the calculus in my head of
could
why
see
I
you weren't
thought
really
that.
paying much
No,
attention.
I was. I could repeat most of it back to you. I think you were soaking wet with perspiration as he outfoxed you. But I think the reason I said your first wife is I'm also aware of the fact that you're Matthew Perry's stepfather. So then I guess I assumed that you married a woman later who had already
Right, yeah.
birthed.
Yes,
Right? Is that, I
we
think
had
that's my
both been married
confusion.
before.
Okay.
In fact, the son who lives in Toronto is my son with my first wife, and Matthew is Suzanne's son with
Okay.
her first husband.
How old was he when you came into the picture?
He was 10-ish.
10-ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember whether he's 9, 10, or 11, but in there somewhere, yeah.
Now, I'm going to get personal, and you don't have to answer, but I once dated a woman with a child,
Yes.
and I fell in love with that child.
Right.
And that's when it got very complicated for me because it was easy for me to stay out of the fold when I was not in love with this kid. But once I was in love with this kid, I very much wanted this kid to turn out well. And then
Right.
I found myself butting in places I probably should not have. It was hard for me to love someone and not want to help guide them as well.
Right.
What I realized in that moment, because I've had many stepdads,
Yeah.
it's a much fucking harder job than I had given it credit for.
You've had many stepdads?
Yes, I have.
This is totally,
plethora.
it's totally 180 of the way it should be today. I mean, you'd be a fascinating person to interview. And yet here I am, we ask questions.
Believe me, as you can
And
hear,
yet
I
you're
interview
opaque. I know
myself.
not- every once in a while, you let out this little bit,
Okay, just a little dribble to keep
Yeah.
you in straight. Yeah, so I found it gave me a new respect for being a stepfather, and I recognize it's a very hard role to take on because you invariably fall in
Right.
love with this kid, and then you want to guide him as a
Sure.
right. Was that hard for you?
Here's the thing about Matthew. He is he's a remarkable guy. He's kind of a force of nature.
Right.
And we had, I think, a relationship that you'd call respectful.
Right.
Because he wasn't going to be guided.
Right. He made it clear that's not the role I want you to fill.
Right. And he'd had, not stepdads, but other men had been in his life and had tried to mold him in ways he didn't want to be molded. And he's pretty good at indicating, no, that's not for me.
Yeah.
But he's extremely bright.
Mm-hmm.
He's extremely talented, and he knows where he wants to go.
Right.
And when somebody is that way, you're inclined to want to, okay, I'm going to stand back and watch this kid and see how he does. And
Well, I applaud that was your approach because my last stepdad, who's my current stepdad, who's been my stepdad for 24 years or something, he was the only one that did it right for me, which was he didn't try to guide me. He's like, I'll just be here. You want to chat? Cool. If not, I'm not, And that's exactly what I happen to need. And again, even though I witnessed that, I found it almost impossible to take that approach.
Parenting is a very interesting thing, isn't it?
Yes.
You never know when you're doing the right thing or not.
Right. And you've had a couple dozen kids, right? I mean, you have a lot of kids.
32.
How many kids do you have? 4? 6?
Six altogether. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I assume you learn a lot as you're going, right? I have 2 little kids, and we're certainly learning hourly.
Yeah. You're learning how much you're never, ever going to learn.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And it requires a certain resignation, right? That you're not going to do this perfectly, and that's that.
Yes, I think that's rule number 1. You understand you're never going to do it perfectly, but you still have to. Every day is a challenge to get it as close to perfect as you can.
Yeah,
I think anyway.
So as you tell your story, you weren't sending your resume out to everyone in Los Angeles. You're sitting at a bar, and the phone rings, and they invite you to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And you decide, and you have to tell your wife.
And, things come along. If something comes along when you're ready for it to happen, like I had just said to this colleague of mine, I'm prepared to be a lifer here. But in fact, telling going areas where should I go there? So I was really ambitious person.
You were or were not?
I was.
Okay, great.
And I
can relate.
had spent some years trying very hard to get the next level up in Canadian television.
Yeah.
And it was one thing after another, going up, and then you hit a ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And at the CBC, I'd gone over there partly to do this show, which I really enjoyed working on, which was very satisfying in many ways. But also, I had my eye on the brass ring, which was the national anchor job, which we all knew was coming up very soon.
Because the current anchor was aging and going to retire.
And had indicated so, and they were actively they were looking at who was going to be the one.
But can I just point out, though, what a job you've chosen where there's quite literally one job available.
It's
if you want to,
pyramidal, as we say.
Yeah.
So the call from the guy in L.A. sort of coincided with I've never said this to anybody in public before, but it's kind of coincided with the recognition of the what was said to me by people who know that that person on the top of the pyramid was not going to be me after all.
Right.
So then I'm thinking, okay, now what? Now where do you go? What do you do? And suddenly this guy says, "Come on out. It's very different here. It's California. It's like you've been in the Chicago Symphony now, or it's some sort of symphonic production now. Come on and do some rock and roll." And it was that different. I mean, culturally, LA is LA, and it's different than every other place.
And this is 1989,
end of 85.
Oh, Jesus, I'm way off. Right 85. Around. Okay,
but it culturally different, yes, but that wasn't the big thing. It was in the culture of the business was completely different. The people's understanding of what news was completely different. The people
in what capacity
delivering the product had a different idea of what it should
because
be.
It had some flair and salesmanship to it, or some
flair and salesmanship, A, performance, B, and then the content is all different. That old expression of "it bleeds, it leads," very much a part of local television in Los Angeles. We started doing those helicopter chases, car chases down the freeways, and you'd go live on the drop of a hat to cover something that happened. Not as skillfully as now because the tools are available and are better, but. In other words, we were attracted by every shiny object, and we didn't. But at the same time,
it's the polar opposite of Canada, just in general.
It kind of was,
right?
Yeah. But at the same time, they were closing bureaus. NBC was closing bureaus all around the world to save money, and KNBC used to have a bureau in Sacramento where they had political coverage coming out of the state capitol. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Closed that, and so we stopped doing. And I'm talking about television generally. We stopped covering the sort of issues that of governance and of how society ought to function and of city.
Yeah, it wasn't very sexy to talk about gridlock in the Senate or something, right?
Right. You talk about what's going to allow you to win the sweeps period, and that's what you put on the news. And if you don't, then you're an idiot. And
then you don't have a job shortly.
Yeah.
Right. How did you adapt to the LA lifestyle, though? Did you at any point go, fucking A, I did it. Look at this. This is great. It sun's out all the time. No. That's a no.
No, I mean,
you can take the Canadian out of Canada.
You can't make him stop feeling guilty.
Yes.
Boy, it's sunny here. Should I really be living in a nice, warm climate like this? Is it right?
Isn't that funny?
There's got to be something wrong with this.
Yes, it's too good to be true. Is this the waiting room for hell? Is this Sin City?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm really glad. I have a lot of issues, but I've never had to wrestle with the decadence. Like I've accepted.
I don't wrestle very hard. Understand?
Okay, you tapped out, but you were wrestling for a short period.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in LA for a while, and then you missed Tim Hortons donuts so much that in 92 you moved back up to Canada. And
well, you know that famous Canadian Leonard Cohen,
yes,
who. One line in one of his songs has always kind of resonated with me. It's I'm sentimental, if you know what I mean. I love the country. I just can't stand the scene. And there was something of that. Is I really, really missed my Canadianness.
Sure.
So anyway, every year or so, somebody would call up and say, why don't you come back? And we got something that you might want to do. And every time I talked to one of my Canadian friends, they'd say, what are you doing down there? Come on back. There are things happening here.
Young Street got a mile longer.
Very amusing. So
longest street in the world, right? Young Street has the title, I think.
It does. Yeah.
Okay.
Man has done his reading.
I owned a Guinness Book of World Record as a kid.
Right. So anyway, the brass ring was at the other network was sort of
opening up,
dangled in front of me, and the suggestion was I go and do the morning show there for a few years, or a couple of years, because the person doing the national news was probably going to be retiring, had indicated probably this is his last contract. And
really quick, is your wife kicking and screaming about all these moves, or is she she's up for them?
She was less enthusiastic about this. I think she thought I was going through a selfish phase or something.
Oh, okay, sure.
And I think I was, honestly. I mean, you start to believe your own shit. And
we're but mere mortals, Keith.
Yeah,
what are we going to do?
Truly.
Yeah.
So then the guy changed his mind, and I found myself on the street one day.
Well, but was it impacted by this thing that I read about? I want to know if this is true. But you were going to interview the prime minister in the evening, and then you jokingly said, "What's his name?" earlier in the day, and he canceled. Is that true or not true?
I had a relationship of sorts with that prime minister. I'd known him since I did the first story about him for national television in Canada back in 82 or 3 when he had made a run for the leadership of the Conservative Party. And I spent some time with him, and we jousted. And I did a story about him, which he didn't really like very much, I don't think. But his response to it was to offer my wife a job on his staff.
Oh, interesting.
And so there was that sort of back and forth, and a jokey kind of relationship, at least as I saw it.
Right. From your point
between
of view.
the two of us.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, Brian Mulroney. You never spend a dull or unhappy moment in Brian Mulroney's company. He's a sweet guy with a huge heart, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, he was leaving the stage. He was retiring as the leader of the Conservative Party and prime minister of the country. Mm-hmm. And we were, covering the convention where his successor was being chosen, and it was the night before he was going to do his last speech and go off into live in Palm Beach, Florida, and
right.
And we were having him on the show, so I, in a amused way, said, "Hey, we got old what's his name on the show tomorrow."
Good joke. I stand by that joke. As a comedian, I sign off on that.
There you go. Well, what's his name's wife didn't like that very much.
Mrs. What's his name?
I don't think he did either. And so he canceled, and there was a hoo-hoo about it. But that was
not
a long,
that was straw or anything.
No.
Okay.
No, it was somebody changed his mind, and that was that.
Okay, so that's a spurious conclusion at best, that had any role in you being ultimately relieved of your duties.
And if you're a conspiracy theorist, you can spin all kinds of things.
I'm not, unfortunately. So that happens, and then do you move back to Los Angeles on your own accord, or do you get an opportunity?
Here's the thing, and one of the reasons I'm happy to be working for NBC now, as I always have been. When I was doing the news at KNBC and said to somebody at the network, I'm not sure this is for me, really. They said, well, why don't you try reporting for Nightly News with Tom Brokaw and for Today's Show? And I said, sure. So I started doing that as well as the anchoring, and I loved that.
Okay.
So
that was happening where?
That was happening from Los Angeles, but in the years before I returned to Canada. So when Then when I called them up after this thing happened. I said, can I come back? And I was the very next morning I was doing a story for Dateline.
Oh, that's amazing.
Went down to Pittsburgh to do a story about a woman running a shop where she fixed transmissions or something.
And you can remember now. So this is Dateline for 1 second. Your copy that you write. Oh shit! I wish I would have printed out a thing
Yeah.
A thing?
Kristen. Well, often when you intro a story, I go, I don't even know if that made sense, and I'm all in. And so I make up fake ones, and occasionally Kristen will write them down. But I think we were watching one, and it was like it starts on a shot of the moon, and I said, under a hot moon on a cold winter's night. Like you'll really mix, you'll mix temperatures, seasons. But you I'm assuming you write those, right? You write your own copy.
Yeah. Yes, but
It's
again,
so good.
Oh, thank you. But truth in advertising. The older I get, the more I rely on this crack staff who
Sure.
they can channel me. So
They can write in your voice.
they will produce a script which I'll say, "Oh, this is shit. I'm going to cut it into pieces and glue it together." No, I don't.
You
say
pull
that.
your glue out in your bourbon. And
Yeah, but no, things have reached the stage now where I go in and I'll write a new top. I'll mess around with their, I'll change the language, but the structure is somebody else's creation, and I work around the edges and make it mine.
Okay, and do you have fun doing that, or is that the homework
I
part
have
of the job?
Wonderful time doing it. I
Yeah.
love doing it.
Yeah, you're a very good writer.
That's very nice of you.
But
to say.
well, that doesn't surprise me because it sounds like your basic foot in the door was that you were condensing these stories into a very good 15-minute spiel, right? That's kind of where you started shining. So it doesn't
although, kid,
surprise
when you
me.
think about it, a really complicated story that would be, we do these 2-hour pieces about an
They're my
individual's
favorite,
thing.
Friday nights or something, you do 2-hour ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 2 hours isn't enough time. You could do a whole series. As you know, you've
Yeah.
done these kinds of things and dwell on the little moments.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of taking a super, super complicated thing like the state of world peace in between or relations between two countries and all the millions and millions of little things that go into making up the reason for announcements being made. And then what you hear about it is a 15-second piece of copy some guy reads over the news.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a good thing. Now, it's changed somewhat with the internet, but now it's just worse and better.
Other things
worse and
also
better,
changed. Yeah.
But
So-
it's, yeah.
And so over the 20 plus years you've been there, you've covered such a range of different stories, not just obviously murders and whatnot, but you've covered, Columbine, you've covered child soldiers in Africa,
Right.
you've covered tsunamis.
Yeah.
Have any of those stories changed your life? Have any of them kind of made you take stock of things, or have any of them impacted you kind of permanently?
Yes, a lot of them have. I mean,
Yeah.
That tsunami. Boy, you should have seen that place, Banda Aceh, in Indonesia. A city of, 500,000 people. And a wave comes in one day, and in 10 minutes, it had killed 250,000.
Oh my
Or
god!
more.
I don't think I knew it was that.
It just like it was.
Is that the deadliest natural disaster in
it's-
modern
yeah,
times?
It's got to be close, if not. Yeah.
250,000.
Oh,
Wow.
crazy! And then we arrive a day or two later, and they're still
Oh.
getting aftershocks in the 6.5 to 7 range.
Oh
And
my
we're-
gosh!
We're
Are there bodies everywhere?
there are bodies everywhere, and the smell is pervasive and hangs in the air. And they were collecting bodies from rubble and putting them in the back of dump trucks and taking them off to mass graves and burning them.
Oh my
and burying
god!
them. And it looked for all the world like you were standing in, as I imagine it must have been, standing at the epicenter of the Hiroshima bomb.
Right.
Everything flattened, little bits of things sticking up here and there, but and then people who had survived this thing in stunned silence, all bent over, kind of looking around to see if they could discover anything to remind them of what used to be there, or members of their family who were just gone like that,
Oh my god!
and they'd never see again. Yeah. I think it just makes you realize how kind of small we all are and how lucky we are not to have gone through such a thing. And that
yeah.
But
Yeah, that's a very bleak thing to witness in life.
Man. And you know what got to me, though? That other countries would rushed in to help and, would send their ships and their airplanes and their trucks, and they're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think all the people in those countries felt they were doing the right thing, as well as the people who were actually doing it. And this is no slam on any of them.
Sure.
I'm just talking about through my eyes when I see, trucks of aid supplies coming through, and many of them were, gift from the people of the U.S. or gift from the people of, and it's like, fuck off, just bring the stuff,
Right.
Don't pat yourself on the back as you do it.
Yes.
Or as the guy from the United Nations was saying to me as we're flying, leaving there, gratefully getting out of there and flying back to a place that wasn't destroyed. He said,
Yet.
He said, these people, they think they can send over grain, or they can send over clothing, or they can send over some product that they already export. And that it's going to help somehow. Where the survivors of this are sophisticated people. What they need is a $20 bill, or they need somebody to come and hand them a wad of money, and they can put their own lives back together just fine.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. That's
So that was something.
So you've covered these really profound events, and then certainly in the last 20 some years, you've had to have been completely embarrassed that you're covering other stories. Have there been any where you're like, "What the fuck am I doing here?" Or you make a call where it's like,
Why are we doing this?
yeah. Is there been any that you were just like, "This is really embarrassing that I'm here doing this"?
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings,
but
it can just be your own personal embarrassment where you're like, I feel silly.
The answer to your question, every story could be potentially a wonderful story, and it doesn't matter.
Right. Okay.
It could be a tiny thing. It doesn't matter what it's about. It really doesn't. It's and the story is never about what it seems to be about. It's always about as my colleague Dennis Murphy used to say, it's never about the murder. It's always about the marriage.
But
in other words, it's all the ancillary stuff that leads from one place to another place that makes a thing interesting. Whether you're there's a narrative to everything you do in life. If you were to get up now and go over to your bathroom with no door on it and do some, there'd be the process where you're thinking about what you're going to do. You take an action to launch this process. Then you reach the execution stage, and then there's the coda to your story when you're back in your chair, kind of contemplating what you've done. And that's what every story is about, really.
Yes. Yeah, most of my life seems to be back in the chair contemplating, and only at that moment recognizing all the errors I made. You have an incredible sense of humor about yourself that I admire, because I'm very thin-skinned. And
Monica, you should speak up more to tell him when he's full of it.
That's true.
No, you really do. I hope that you recognize, like, my obsession with you and Kristen's is very genuine. There's no bullshit. Also, I think it's hysterical. You lean on everything. That's also in the cake that is Keith Morrison. It's one of the ingredients. Also, you have sweet leather jackets. We wear the same shoes. I just took a picture of them.
Yeah,
you're inordinately hip. I'm going to say that. But you have an actual method to your madness on this leaning, which is you hate doing stand-ups. Is that what I read? It feels awkward to you.
Yes.
And a stand-up just to educate people what would normally
it's when the reporter stands in front of a camera and emotes for a while, and sometimes you have to do that. I mean, a lot of the material is on cable television now. There's nothing to cover it. It's live, and you're just bringing people up to date on things. Of course, you have to sit in front of a camera and talk to it.
Yeah,
that's how it works. But if you're doing a story where it's where you're telling a whole story about a person, about a family, about a life, about things that happened in certain places where the moon was full but the night was chill, or something like that.
Yes.
He already made it better.
I know he did.
But the correspondent, the person telling you the story, is not the important thing. The important thing is the story. So my complaint was always, everybody wants you to do a stand-up in the middle of this. Why? There's no need for it. It doesn't help the story.
Right.
And often it's a method of self-aggrandizement that just is unseemly.
Yeah. I'm gonna put you through a humility workshop. I think we could ratchet it up just a little, or rather maybe ratchet it down a little bit. But having seen so many episodes of Dateline, one can't help but start fearing that their loved one will murder them at some point, right? This is a very natural assumption to make.
Sure,
if you watch it enough.
Doesn't it happen in most marriages?
Yes. And so I wanted to head that off at the pass. I wanted to take that option off the table for her. So I preemptively searched on her phone how to get away with murdering my husband.
And so if you were ever murdered, somebody would go look up her phone. And
we would know immediately
Yes.
she did it, right?
Yeah,
so I've really
absolutely.
kind of neutered that situation. Do you think that was a pretty clever way to avoid getting murdered?
But she found out about it. So,
But it's still there. It's still in her search history. You know, an FBI agent would still find that search.
it's probably the most famous husband evasive tactic that's been made in the last couple of years.
I will not choose the approach where I'm just nice and don't deserve to be killed.
No.
That would be too simple. You've lived a long time now.
God, yes.
You were the one that pointed that out, not me.
Yeah.
And you've watched a lot of iterations of both media, cultural developments, huge technological developments.
Right.
Could you pinpoint something that you think is the most significant or that you're amazed that happened in your lifetime? It'd probably be hard, but
Well, it would be hard,
Yeah.
I suppose. But maybe the saying that I don't know who it's sort of McLuhan-esque saying we're creatures of our tools. They change us more than we change them. So we had a certain kind of culture and society in the age before the internet came along, and now it's a different culture and society, and we are different creatures.
Yeah.
We're wired differently. We behave differently in different situations. We have different kinds of leaders who have, who are regurgitating ideas that we all thought were buried 70 years ago, but here they come because and I think it's because of the fact that these new tools have created different ways of being human being, and that's the huge headline as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, but it is impressive that you've navigated a lot of cultural changes in the workplace, in everything that you've managed to never go. Well, this no longer makes sense to me, so I'm tapping out. You know, I think it's a testament to your flexibility, which is a pretty admirable quality, that you have continued to be fluid and functional within an ever evolving system. I think that becomes overwhelming for people.
Thank you.
You took that compliment as good as the last 10, and I appreciate it. Keith Morrison, it truly is a fanboy honor for me to have you come into The Addict, and I really thank you for crossing town on a rainy day.
Thank you, and thank you for wearing the coveralls and the striped socks.
I did not know if you were going to challenge me to wrestling or whatever. I just wanted to have all my bases covered.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Keith. And now my favorite part of the show, the fact check with my soulmate, Monica Padman. You want to take a cleansing breath before we start?
Sure. Whoa.
I don't feel like you expunge any dirtiness because I don't hear anything.
Because I opened my mouth, so I didn't do what you did.
Could you do one where you kind of get dirty?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Don't worry. I let out a lot of negativity.
You did in toxicity?
Hmm?
Okay. FACTCHECK. That's in honor of Miniature Mouse Clubhouse. It's the Miniature Mouse Clubhouse. Come inside and buy some facts. The Miniature Mouse Clubhouse. Come inside. Oh, Toodles.
Oh, Toodles.
Okay, Toodles. Do we have any facts, oh, Toodles?
Mm-hmm.
Peter O'Toodles.
First, I want to tell a story.
Oh, great.
Okay.
I love stories.
Mm-hmm. For our listeners, because it didn't come up in the episode, but and I wonder if it's come up on this podcast before, but for Christmas a few years ago, Kristen and I came together to make a epic present for you, in which we took little baby Delta. She was so little back then.
Yeah.
And
She's a little honey baked ham back then.
yeah, she couldn't even talk. She could say 2 or 3 words.
Yeah.
And it started because one day she was at work with you at Warner Brothers, and she was like bossing people around with stomping around.
We went into the sound stage where we were going to record the score.
Yeah.
And mix the movie. And she walked in like such a boss, and I was walking behind her, and she was really walking around like she owned the place.
Yeah.
And then we
swagger.
started thinking, what if there was a baby director? Like that was really good. And
Yeah.
she was a once in a lifetime baby director.
Yep.
And that was my joke I would say all the time. And
She was a
then
baby director.
You guys got together.
We got together and we made a movie about baby director. Full
Most
narrative.
incredible movie ever.
It started out, it was going to be like a 2-minute little iPhone video and turned into a 25-minute
Film.
noir. And we
Called in every
spent-
favor possible.
We sure did.
All-star cast in this thing.
It was a mockumentary about the
The
making.
rise and fall of
Correct. The making of Baby Director's second movie after her first big hit.
by Night Night Baby. No.
The first movie that she made was called No Nine Nine.
No Night Night. Yeah, she's never wanted to go Night Night. So she used to say No Night
No
Night.
Nine Nine.
Yeah, so that was her first film. And you guys got Favreau was in it. Bradley Cooper was in it. The president of Warner Brothers, Craig Silverman, was in it.
Yep.
My agent was in it.
That's right. We got
I couldn't, every time there was a new scene, I would just start screaming, laughing that you got these people to participate in this. But the craziest thing, and do you want to say it?
No, you can say it.
It's the movie starts out. You guys forced me to go to a screening room at Warner Brothers, and I'm like, what is this thing that we're going to see? And it starts off, and it's baby director walking into a building, and all of a sudden Keith Morrison's voice starts narrating like it's an episode of Dateline, and I could not figure out what the fuck was happening.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's Delta. Did they pull his audio from some existing thing? And then I realized, no. He is talking about Baby Director.
Yep. And
I was have you heard me laugh out?
never.
I was screaming.
I know.
laughing.
I thought maybe you were going to die.
I did too.
I kind of hoped you would. That would be a good way to go, you know?
Absolutely.
But
Death
he
by laugh.
wrote the copy himself. We asked if he wanted to or if we could send him some stuff, and he said he would take a stab at it. And
It's
boy, did it
Shakespearean.
deliver. Yeah.
The level, the bar is so high for what he wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
He positioned it as like a Greek tragedy.
it was a labor of love for an audience of one
Yeah,
person.
and you guys put so much work
Oh
into
my
it.
God.
It blows that whole sloth present way out of the water. I get way too much credit for that. This Baby Director was like the ultimate gift anyone's
We
ever been
spent-
given.
4 months on it.
Yeah, and they were doing it all under my nose too, because
Mm-hmm.
I was working on the lot at Warner Brothers directing, and you guys were sneaking in while I was at lunch, using my office, using the golf cart, just exploiting all the assets of Warner Brothers
Yeah.
without a permit,
That's
without
right.
paying a dime.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
It was a guerrilla filmmaking.
at its best.
Okay, so Keith said, they couldn't really remember what anniversary Dateline just celebrated. And we're coming up on the 27th
Ooh.
season of Dateline.
That makes me upset that it's debuting on September 28th. There'd be so much more
sure.
symmetry if they released it on September 27th.
You're right.
Or lied and said it was the 28th anniversary. Either outcome would work for me.
You're right.
But celebrating 27 on the 28th doesn't work for me.
So just a little bit too off.
It is
Yeah, I understand that.
disjointed.
So, full disclosure, we recorded this a few months back.
Yeah, we were waiting for the premiere of the show to come out.
Yes, and yes.
We like to
exactly.
try to reward people's time. When
Sure.
they come and donate it to us by promoting their project.
Yeah.
It doesn't make much sense if 4 months ago we told you to watch the season premiere on September 28th. You would have forgotten.
That's right. We did it for you guys, really.
You're welcome.
But you said I don't know, I don't remember why you said this, but you said Kristen is 37. And she probably was at the time that we recorded that, but she has since turned 38. Kristen Bell's 38.
That's one fact she might not have thought it was necessary.
I can't help it.
Yeah,
I have to check every
right.
fact.
You're right. To maintain your integrity.
That's right. Silver Spoons came up again, and I was gonna find the essay again, but it's okay, because if you want to listen to that, if you want to hear the essay, you can just go to the Joel McHale fact check, because we do talk about it in the Joel McHale fact check.
Okay,
right?
and I read it out loud there.
Yeah. Okay, was there more combat in Vietnam than World War II? Because you said there was.
Well, hold on a second. That's not exactly what I said.
But
I said the soldiers on a 1-year tour saw more combat than World War II soldiers saw in a 2-year deployment. That's not to say there was more or less cumulative combat. It's just how much combat did your average soldier witness on their tour. So I just want to be real clear about that.
the average infantryman in the South Pacific during World War II saw about 40 days of combat in 4 years. The average infantryman in Vietnam saw about 240 days of combat in 1 year.
Well, there you go.
Thanks to
Okay.
the mobility of the helicopter.
There you go.
So,
Okay, good. That stood up to what? I thought maybe we were just going to say if there was more combat in World War II.
nope.
Okay.
On Killing is by David Grossman. You've mentioned that book a few times if people want to look into it. It's called On Killing, the Psychological Cost of Learning to Kill in War and Society. So, you can do
Fascinating book.
that. Yeah.
Recommended to me by my buddy Duffy, who's a Navy SEAL.
Oh, cool.
Kill.
Well, I have a sad fact.
And killing.
Killing. I have a sad fact to correct.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Here we go.
it is sad for real.
Okay.
Also, at this time that we recorded this, Barton was still with us,
Oh, okay.
and you referred to your stepdad as your current. You say my current stepdad, and he has passed.
Yes.
So he's still your stepdad, of course, but just so people know that
Yeah, is he? Is that what we would say?
he is.
Yeah, I'd say my dad. My
Yeah,
dad used to
yeah.
pick me up. Yeah, my stepdad. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't say when I was a kid, my former dad would pick me up in his Corvette.
When I was a kid, my old dad.
Yeah. I had to think that through, though.
Yeah, that is.
Not how it works.
You know, but it's because you would never refer to one of your old stepdads as your stepdad. One of your previous stepdads.
My ex-stepdad.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wouldn't say my stepdad, Greg.
Right.
Yeah.
So you'd say my
Ex-stepdad.
ex-stepdad or my old stepdad.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, he'll be
But Barton
permanently
is
my
your
stepdad.
stepdad.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yep.
okay. Is Young Street the longest street in the world? You said it was. Until 1999, the Guinness Book of World Records repeated the popular misconception that it was 1,896 kilometers long and thus the longest street in the world. But this was due to a conflation of Yonge Street with the rest of Ontario's Highway 11. So,
But it did say it in the Guinness Book of World Records when I was a kid.
today, no section of Yonge Street is a provincial. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Highway.
Like I would know.
That's true. The Guinness Book of World Records no longer lists Yonge Street as the longest street in the world and has not chosen a replacement street, but cites the Pan American Highway as the world's longest motorable road.
Oh, interesting. How long's that prick? I think that's what people race the Pan America race down in. This is a race I want to do in my lifetime. It's all vintage cars, and they race through public roads in Mexico, and then they shut down little sections, and those sections are timed, and then they open it back up. So it's like a rally and timed racing. It's just like an 8-day party. You roll into these towns in your vintage cars, and everyone's dancing and celebrating, drinking tequila. It seems really fun.
Oh, that does sound fun.
Yeah.
Okay. The deadliest natural disaster, we wondered if it was the tsunami, The deadliest disaster since 1900 was the 1931 China floods.
Ooh. 800,000 people?
Couldn't tell you.
Okay.
But it was the deadliest. And the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004 was the third on the list after the 1970 cyclone in Bangladesh.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
A cyclone?
Yeah.
Isn't a cyclone a hurricane we figured out?
I thought a
Depending on where
cyclone
you
was
are
a
in the world.
tornado.
Fuck, I don't know.
I think it's a tornado.
I think it's a hurricane. Holy fuck, Rob just came in at 3.7 million for the China flood. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
1,000? They weren't reporting.
They didn't
it
know
all.
how to count back then in 1931. Poor things.
That's common though for these countries back in the day to underreport stuff because they were trying to maintain their image abroad, and they would fib about stuff.
The opposite of getting attention by saying you're sick.
Yeah, and they're not sympathy seekers.
No.
Yeah. Good on you, China.
Okay. You want to tell us if a cyclone is a tornado or a hurricane before we move on?
Rob? Monica's so threatened right now.
Rob?
Wobby wob. Is a cyclone? I think a cyclone's a hurricane.
I think it's a tornado.
Okay. We'll see who's right.
How much you want to bet?
Minnie Mouse versus what's the big ugly guy who he's always cheating? He's got a name like Chad or something in Mickey and the Roadster Racers.
Oh.
There's a guy who cheats all the time. He's like the biggest guy.
Oh, no.
I'd say that's who I am, and then you're Miniature Mouse.
I don't know about
A
that.
cyclone may be referred to as a typhoon or a hurricane.
Okay, a cyclone may be referred to as a typhoon or a hurricane. So I am unfortunately
Is a
correct.
typhoon sometimes referred to as a tornado? Is it a 3-step thing?
No. A tornado is a much smaller storm that starts over land.
Or no, and continues. I think
all hurricanes come offshore.
water. Yes, they do.
And cyclones.
And typhoons.
Fuck. You're really bent out of shape about this.
I don't. What site? What site are you
site?
getting that from? A cyclone
you're
has
trying to
always
debunk.
been a tornado my whole life.
You know what you're thinking of is
With Twister, no.
hold on. I think cyclone is a shape. And so a tornado can take on the shape of a cyclone. But I think a storm that's called a cyclone, I think that's maybe where you're, on some level, you could call a tornado a cyclone, but I don't think you call a cyclone a tornado. Does that make any sense? I'm out on a limb right
I
now.
don't know.
I've waded out into deep water. Tropical storm, David.
Cyclone is any kind of circular windstorm.
Oh.
Cyclone is, so right. I was just dead right again. So a tornado could be a cyclone, be described as a cyclone, but a cyclone could not be described as a tornado.
Wait, but a cyclone is any kind of tropical windstorm?
No,
Is that what you
no.
said?
Technically, a cyclone is any kind of circular windstorm.
Circular.
Yeah.
But now it's only used to describe a strong tropical storm.
Ooh,
Oh, so
strong
okay,
tropical.
now, okay, this makes so much sense.
So much more
It
sense.
said
Okay.
it's a technically, which I am.
Uh-huh.
I abide by the technical rules. Technically, a
But I just wanna
cyclone
remind you
is
that-
any kind of circular storm.
I want to remind you that your initial statement was a cyclone is a tornado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So technically,
No.
it is.
A tornado could be a cyclone, but a cyclone can't be a tornado.
Cyclone could be, because a cyclone technically is any circular storm. So a cyclone
You
could
would-
be a hurricane or a tornado.
No, you would need to find on the internet a statement that said a tornado could be a tropical storm.
No.
Okay.
It's
Well,
saying a cyclone.
Bangladesh.
A cyclone is the overall term. Technically, now we know. Now they've changed it. Okay, before a cyclone is the technical term for any circular storm. So it's the overall. It's the umbrella cyclone
Again,
under.
right. Again, so you could describe a tornado as a cyclone because
Yeah.
because a tornado is a circular storm. But a cyclone in Bangladesh could never be described as a tornado. And that was your first statement, is that a cyclone hit Bangladesh, which you think is a tornado. And I said, no, it's not a tornado. You see my distinction? I hope that somewhere in America, a man was driving a truck with a gun rack behind his head, and he pulled the rifle off of the gun rack and shot his stereo listening to this debate.
What? I stand by my fact.
That it could be a tornado down in Bangladesh?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll go along with that.
I'm trying to think
Bangladesh. On the water?
Yeah, I just can't. I guess it's on the water, yeah.
They have all those ship graves there. People just take their huge ships and just desert them in Bangladesh. And then all these kids and everyone, they go and they take parts out and try to make scrap out of them.
Oh, really?
It's a pretty gnarly scene, the beach where they park them all. There's like a 60 minutes on it.
Well,
It's
if
rough.
they're on the water, then it probably is a hurricane, unfortunately. Okay. He said some quote, and he couldn't remember who said it. He said, the quote was, "We're creatures of our tools. They change us more than we change them." But the real quote is, what? Oh, I thought you were laughing. Who laughed just now?
No, but you've gone paranoid.
God, you laughed.
I really didn't do anything. I mean, I'll say I laughed. I love you.
You don't have to lie to love me.
Okay. Well, you've grown a little paranoid. No one did anything. And then you looked up like we were snickering
I heard
behind
a
your
noise.
back.
You were. Stop talking about me.
Stop talking.
Okay. The real quote is, "Men have become the tools of their tools." And that's Henry David Thoreau.
Oh, on Walden's Pond.
Yes, Walden, yes.
I used to love David Thoreau when I was in high school. He was one of the only poets I liked because he coined the marching to the beat of your own drum. He said it differently. Also,
HDT.
HDT, what's that?
His
Henry
name.
David Thoreau.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom was really obsessed with him too.
Yeah, she said that when she came on here.
Thoreau.
That's all.
And the actor Justin Thoreau.
Mm-hmm.
First time I met him, I said,
That's his dad?
it's his son.
Oh.
His son is Henry David Thoreau.
Oh, my gosh.
But my first question to him was, are you in some way related to Henry David Thoreau? And he actually is.
He is?
Yeah, he's like, I want to say it was his like great uncle or something. No wonder he's a
I wish
skilled
I
writer.
could be related to a Thoreau.
Well, you and I have talked about this. We differ on this. People who are interested in their genealogy to find out like famous people and their history,
Yeah.
that has no appeal to me, and it does to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're.
I would
different about.
feel special if I had that blood.
Yeah, and I was like, I wouldn't feel the least bit special. I didn't accomplish that. I didn't write on Walden's Pond. It's not even on Walden's Pond. It's just Walden's Pond,
Walden.
I think. Yeah. Or it's
called
just Walden.
Walden.
Yeah. Yeah. What? So how could I take any pride in that? I didn't do that.
Because genetics are real. So things do get passed down. So if it's someone is a profound, a profound person in society figure,
You're going to
then
inherit their status?
You're going to inherit whatever made them profound.
Well,
Could be good, could be bad.
unless, no, but none of us would agree if your grandpa's a Holocaust denier that you're somehow guilty of that. You just go, oh my
I
God,
would.
there's nothing to do.
Maybe, depending.
But we would agree that no one should take on the sins of their grandparents. So why on earth would you be able to take on the accomplishments of your grandparents? It's just like you have nothing to do with them.
But it's just pride. It's okay to have pride.
I don't think so.
for
And
your
that kind of
family.
thing.
Yeah, right. You
It's
have
good to
so
have
much pride over your family.
No, it's good to have pride in your own accomplishments.
You have pride over your mom's accomplishments.
I wouldn't call it pride. I have admiration and respect. But
You
it's
have-
not my accomplishment.
But you have pride that you come from a hardworking person.
Gangster.
Yeah. You're proud of that.
No, I had, I know, I don't feel like I started on a leg up or like I feel better about myself because she was so awesome. I was like, I still have to do everything for me to feel awesome.
Yeah, it's
on my
not a
own.
shortcut. It's not saying like you automatically get to the next level, but it's
I think this is your caste system speaking through your privilege.
how dare you? My parents were
Did you say your
unmentionables.
grandparents? No, you said your grandma.
They're from a
very
high caste.
High Castle.
They are
High
from
cast.
a high cast.
Yeah.
Not to brag, but again,
Yeah.
again,
Does that
happened again.
Does it feel? Do you feel prideful when you think of what a high caste she was from?
No, I think that's disgusting.
Right. Yes, I know
But
you
that's
do.
but if they were like Nelson Mandela,
Mhm.
I'd have so much pride. They haven't done anything like that.
You would.
I have a lot of pride. Actually, I have a lot of pride that my
Dad.
no, I have no pride. I'm just kidding. But I have a lot of pride that my grandfather is a biologist and did all these studies in genetics and is brilliant. I have a lot of pride in that.
Yeah.
I have admiration and pride. Like I'm proud that is
Where you come
part
from.
of my yeah.
Yeah. You don't feel like, well, then you need to accomplish something amazing. I think it's even cooler to come from like 7th generation incarcerated parents and then you go to Harvard. That's like a much cooler
Sure,
thing.
underdog story. Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah, there we go.
But you get what you get, you know?
And then you don't complain.
You get what you get and you don't get upset.
Yeah, you get what you get and you don't get upset.
So you have to find a way to be proud of either thing.
Yeah. Like I have a great uncle that murdered another one of the uncles.
You love that. You
I
probably
weirdly-
do love that.
Well, because it makes it that much more impressive what my grandma Yolis did.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad and then me.
You also think it's cool to get in.
To murder your
scuffles.
brother?
Yeah.
No.
I think you
But
like
we would
that.
go visit our great grandma Honchal, and this Cal who had committed the homicide,
Sure.
he'd hang out in his tighty whities and he'd have a pistol with him at all times.
Mm,
It was fucking scary because it was also a farm
I'd be scared.
way up north Michigan. It was like if Cal wanted to shoot us, it'd be years before anyone figured it out. I mean, you were out in the middle of nowhere. There were chickens running around everywhere. And here's Uncle Cal in his tight whites and a .38 pistol.
yeah.
This is a very uncomfortable situation.
You know what this reminds me of?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hillbilly Elegy.
Yeah. That's how I know. That's how I know. We should have that author on just a debate.
I
maybe.
would love to have him on, and
You
I
would.
would not. I would be on his side.
I know you would because you didn't have Uncle Cal. If you had Uncle Cal, it would read phony to you. I guarantee it. But I can have him on and debate it.
I'd like to do that.
I also can recommend the book. I'm not saying don't read the book.
Mhm.
Everyone who's read it loves it. I personally felt like the stories weren't firsthand, that they were third hand. That is my critique of it.
Yeah.
And that's just me.
It's just a big thing to say that.
I don't think it's that big of a thing. If you know something, if you're an expert at something, you can tell when you're hearing a non-expert talk
But
about
you
it.
are an expert in your life story. You can't say you're an expert on everyone's life story.
I'm not. I would say I'm an expert on drunk adults being violent. I'd say I'm an expert on that. Let's just put it this way. Like we always talk about boyhood on this
Yeah.
podcast. Linklater told the true story.
Okay.
There have been
Of
fake
his story.
fake
Or somebody's. He told a very specific story that resonated with a lot of people. It had a lot of themes that cross over in that world.
it was very clear that whether it was the person who wrote it or directed it,
Yeah.
that person had actually had that experience.
Mhm.
That was tangible,
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's true. And I would be able to, and when reading that book, I don't get the boyhood feeling. I don't say, oh, he was in that situation. I go, he heard about that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I know.
I stand by that.
Okay.
Maybe he'll want to fight me on here.
I hope.
Maybe that'll be the solution. Him and I fist fight.
No.
What if in my mind, whoever won that fist fight won the argument?
I would not be surprised if that's what you thought.
All right. Well, listen, I hate when I lose you in these things. We start out really good. with FACTCHECK, and then I lose you. And
What do you mean you lost me?
I lost you. Now you're mad at me.
I'm
about
not
the
mad at you.
Hillbilly Elegy.
I'm not mad at you, but I am not mad at you, but
You get frustrated.
I
with
get
me.
frustrated that you sometimes
Or know it all.
no, that you make that you can't possibly. There's no way in the whole world that somebody could have had a similar experience as you, and it's a bit different, and it comes across a bit different.
Yeah, what I'm saying is if someone tells a story where a drunk adult with a history of violence takes 4 steps that I recognize as the 4 predictable steps, and then the 5th step is completely antithetical to what that person would then do next, is the same, in my opinion, as being a chemist who is reading the account of someone mixing hydrogen, then peroxide, then this, then that, and then they're along the right, and then the 5th thing they add, it turns blue, and you go, no, that's not what happens.
But it's not science. People are not science. They're not as regimented
way
as that.
more predictable than you do.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
I just don't.
and that's okay. Because they all went the same way. Even if the people were different and the houses were different, when a man with pride who is violent is on tilt, things happen. They happen the same way for every single guy that is a violent, drunk guy on full tilt. If the people around him are going to be victims and he can get away with it, it happens. I've watched it happen with dozens of different people, all with the same outcome. So I don't think that because it was in Ohio that it would have gone differently.
You've seen it in a particular
I'm not just talking
environment.
about one person.
I know.
I'm talking about many people.
But in one area.
Michigan, sure.
In your area in Michigan.
Well, no, many areas in Michigan. County fairs in northern Michigan. Livonia, where my grandparents lived. Sturgis, where my 200 miles away. So, yeah, maybe it's specific to Michigan, but I don't think so. I think it's specific to white, violent, prideful males.
We've just
being
also,
silverbacks.
I've made this comparison before that if I'm reading Mindy's book or reading something that Aziz has written about his life and his family and those things, or any of these books, I don't like balk at something that doesn't match my perception of growing up to Indian parents or anything like that, or all of that. That to me is just that person's experience in that circumstance. That circumstance is the same as mine, but the experience is not guaranteed to be the same.
Yes, your experience at the eye of the storm will be completely different and unique to you. I agree with you. But if you tell me that you take a grizzly bear out of a cage and you put 5 people with blood and meat around their neck, and then you hit the grizzly bear with a baseball bat, I can tell you what the grizzly bear is going to do. The grizzly bear is, to me, the variable that doesn't change. Now, the people sitting in the circle with the meat strapped around their neck, they could have any number of interpretations of what that experience was like. And yes, I couldn't argue whether they were scared or they had empathy or they felt like they were providing a service or the bear's a bully. All those things, which is Aziz's perspective, Mindy's perspective, your perspective, those things are all completely subjective. But what a grizzly bear is going to do is not, in my opinion, very subjective. We can predict what a grizzly bear does.
Well, 2 things. One, I have to disagree based on my parents. My parents are not doing what the grizzly bear parents did often in these stories.
Sure.
So this idea that there's like a expected outcome every time, and there would be an expected outcome, but they did not follow that.
Yeah. But again, if the guy's story is, yeah, the grizzly bear got up on his hind legs, it growled at us, then it swiped at us, and then it lay down on his back and rolled around, and we all pet it. When it gets to that point, I'm like, that didn't happen. I'm sorry that you guys didn't pet the grizzly bear. It didn't roll on its back. And I'll go even further. These situations where a man is enraged, what makes a person, a human, is the frontal lobe, is the part of their brain that is thinking about the future, making decisions with empathy and sympathy and all these things, and behaving the way we want people in society to. But a drunk lunatic on a rage bender is fully midbrain thinking. Their brain that they're using at that point is as primitive as the grizzly bears. So all that frontal cortex stuff is offline. And I think they're incredibly predictive.
Okay.
Is just why I think it's different than like you're at dinner, your parents are both immigrants from India. What's the outcome? Well, there's so many variables because there's identity and frontal cognition and projecting into the future. And there's a million varieties. But
I would say the same thing about any human in any circumstance.
Yeah, and I would
ever.
argue once, again, on killing, which you just brought up, once your heart rate is 170 and your adrenaline reaches a certain point, your frontal lobe doesn't work. You're all midbrain thinking, which is what that whole book on killing is about. So once you reach a state, nobody's thinking with their frontal lobe. It just can't happen.
So do you think that every person who has Alzheimer's behaves the same way?
No.
Because the same degenerative thing is happening to their brain.
People with Alzheimer's are not relegated to midbrain thinking. That's not what's happening.
But I'm just talking about their brain is degenerating in the exact same way. All of these people.
I'm asking sincerely, is it? I don't know that that's how it works. I don't know if it attacks the exact same part of everyone's brain or if it's like in different spots in different people or what. I don't know.
I guess I don't know either.
But you could propose the hypothetical to me as if Alzheimer's patients all end up with simply midbrain thinking, I would say their behavior would get really predictable.
And I think it does. That's why there are indicators of Alzheimer's. There are predictable elements and qualities, but that doesn't mean that every single person is going to behave the exact same way because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, for someone like you who prides himself in not seeing things in such a black and white manner in life, that it feels very binary,
definitive for me. Yeah, and maybe I can't escape my history, but I have seen 100 guys get violent, and I don't think that those stories in that book rang true from those experiences I had. I just don't.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
He's probably an amazing guy. I would like him. The book is very well written. I recommend that people read it. Just to me, I didn't find it to be. Yeah. Didn't ring true to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Just like if I wrote a book about LA gangs, the experience of being in an LA gang, someone who was really in the Crips, they would read it and they'd go, this dude wasn't. They would be able to tell I wasn't. Doesn't matter how much research I would do on it.
Yeah, and I don't think, and that's exactly you're accusing him of doing that. And
yes, I am.
That is a huge accusation.
I know it is.
That's not fair.
No, it's, by the way, this exact same thing happened and I was dead right. I read Million Little Pieces. I read Million Little Pieces, which I loved. It's a great book. And so is my friend Leonard, the follow-up. I read Million Little Pieces. I loved it. It's a great book. And I said, that's bullshit. That is not, an addict would not possibly do the things that he just did and have the outcome he had. I'm sorry. I've seen 1,100 people try to get sober, and knowing what he said about himself and how he used, there's no way that happened. And I knew it on a cellular level, and everyone that was sober knew it. And everyone who was not said, no, that was his experience. And then come to find out, he had to admit that wasn't true. He had made that up. You can know when something's not true.
Yeah, but no, because it's a huge accusation on somebody's integrity. You don't even know this person. You've never spoken to them in your life. You're taking one passage and deciding you're giving a moral evaluation on a human.
But it wasn't wrong with Million Little Pieces.
Okay, so it wasn't
everyone
wrong
who thought
one time.
Well, but everyone that thought that was correct.
That's fine, but
And Stephen King wrote this great piece in the back of Entertainment Weekly. I encourage people to find it. What is his name who wrote Million Little Pieces? Do you guys remember that guy's name?
James something.
Yeah, James. By the way, I feel so bad for him that he was exposed as having James Frey. I feel so bad that James Frey was outed like that on Oprah, and I don't agree with any of that. I don't think he deserved any of that. I think he wrote a beautiful book, and it's awesome. But I knew it was bullshit. And Stephen King wrote this great thing in the back of Entertainment Weekly, a one-page thing about we addicts always knew it was fake. And we just do. You can say we didn't. You can say it's unfair. You can say all this stuff. That no, his experience could have been unique. You can say all that, but we knew from page 10, and we were right. And so for me, I have the same feeling reading Hillbilly Elegy that I had when I read Million Little Pieces. And I just have that feeling. And I stand by it because I was vindicated the first time it didn't work for me on a cellular level. And this one doesn't either.
Okay.
All right. Did it help when I at least parallel it with that book?
No.
For you to see my point of view.
No, I know that happened, and that's already been proven to all be true. So that's to me, I think it's irresponsible to be making a public accusation about somebody's moral integrity. I think that's very irresponsible. And I think what you said earlier
about James Frey.
I think what you said earlier about somebody saying, reading that people are saying that you've had plastic surgery. When you know that's not true, and they can say, I know what plastic surgery looks like. I've seen it. I know for a fact that's what it looks like. It's not okay to do that. It's not okay for that person to say you've had plastic surgery.
So we're dead clear. I'm not slandering that author. I'm not even saying that. What I am saying is that the book doesn't ring true to me.
No,
that's fine. That is not how those things go down.
That's fine to say it doesn't ring true to you. That's not, you've said some other stuff in this conversation that is more defamatory.
Yeah. I mean, again, I go back to the James Frey thing. I knew it and every addict knew it. So, and you would have said, I can't say that then. You would have said, you can't say that that's not really what happened with his sobriety. And I'd say, okay, but I know it's not. I just know that that's not how it works. I know how it works through a ton of, talk about 10,000 hours, 100,000 hours. I know that's not how it works. So there has to also be room in this world for conviction when you know. Yeah.
Addiction is more scientific than
the culture of pride. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. There's more science involved in addiction and what's happening in your brain chemistry and all of these things than the experience of living in a place. There's far more subjectivity to that.
Yeah, but the premise of the book is elaborating on how the culture of pride works, how it started in Tennessee and Kentucky, how it then migrated north to Ohio, which it also migrated north to Michigan. We know that comes from Scottish and Irish settlers who herded animals, and they had undefined boundaries, and that's why they had to stand their ground and fight. These are all things that have been very well studied, and we understand the causality and why it's happening. And now when you're just talking about what the result of the culture of pride is, and some of it is just not ringing true, I don't really know what to say about that.
Okay.
Yeah. This is one of many you and I will probably for years disagree about.
Probably.
I respect you as an adversary, and I appreciate your conflicting thoughts always.
I respect you as well.
All right, I love you.
Love you.
You Minnie Mouse.